That's something that I've really learned about mental toughness through this all, is that it's built through practice, and it's also built through hardship and challenges. I'll be honest with you, I started to doubt myself. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know this. I don't know that. I haven't trained that much. And so it caused me to doubt myself. The Pierce who ran that half marathon was not mentally tough enough to get through the highs and lows of a 200-mile race. But because I did that half marathon, it triggered this belief that I could do more.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast. I'm your host, David Charlton. In today's episode, I'm joined by endurance athlete, coach, and world record holder, Pierce Showe, whose story is all about mindset, about belief, and pushing human limits. From his early days playing lacrosse to running grueling 200-mile races, Pierce shares what it truly takes to build mental toughness. We dive into how he's learned to stay present under extreme pressure, the power of breaking big goals into smaller steps, and why mental toughness is a skill anybody can train. So whether you're a coach, parent, or an athlete looking to strengthen your mindset, you're going to love this inspiring conversation. Let's get started. Hi, Pierce. It's great to meet you. Nice to put a face to a name. Would you be able to just share a little bit about your background and your interest, your pursuit of endurance sports to the listeners and the viewers?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks so much for having me on, David. I'm super excited to be on this. I love the topic of just mentality, mental toughness, grit. What does it take to actually have that? How can we demystify it so it's not something that's like so far out that only the Kobe Bryants, the LeBron Jameses, or the incredible sports figures have, but how can we have it ourselves? And but yeah, so super excited to be here. Thanks for having me on. And I do a lot of endurance running. I do a lot of ultramarathon races. And you may look at me right now and think like, oh my gosh, how has this guy been able to do all these races from such a young age? And I'll demystify it for you right now in that, like, I started 7 years ago with a half marathon. And actually before that, I was playing lacrosse. Not sure if that's as popular where you're at, but very popular in the United States, especially like Midwest and in the East Coast. And there's a lot of running. So I have this background that you may not realize, just seeing my social media page, but it's gone from like, 5Ks to half marathons to full marathons to 50-mile races, 60-mile races, and even some 200-mile races over the course of several years. And so the cool thing with that is not only has my endurance grown, but also my mindset. And that's something that I've really learned about mental toughness through this all, is that it's built through practice, and it's also built through hardship and challenges. And who I am today is because of the challenges that I've had to endure and also persevere through. And so, yeah, I'm super excited to dive in wherever you want to take it. Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, well, let's start there. You've hit on something straight away I like about how mental toughness is developed through different experiences that you go through. So yeah, go on, share some of those experiences that you've no doubt the challenges or some of the challenges that you'll have faced whilst doing these crazy 200.
Yeah, yeah. There's a verse that I really love. It says, Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works together for the good of those who love him and who've been called according to his purpose. And I think that verse really speaks to the power of how, like, God will use things together for our good that might not be seen as the good. And so I'm going to tell you something that's really impacted my life, and it's not in a specific race, but it ties into my races, in that when I was very young, when I was 6 years old, I went through my parents getting divorced. And it was very challenging to go from parents being together to now split, living in a big house to living in the apartment, feeling like I'm the man to feeling like I'm kind of an outsider. And so That was really challenging, but what that did was it put like this drive in me and also like this hunger to be the best that I could be because I like wanted to do something with my life. I didn't like the way my family was. Like I love my family, but like no one wants to be in a divorced family. And so I decided very young that like I wanted to be different. So I worked really hard. And so that mindset like I brought into the running. And so once I found running, it was this like really cool thing because I could challenge myself with the runs and with each race, it was challenging. But once you complete it, there's something like an unlock here. And this is kind of like a start to mental toughness. I'll share this story. So I'm playing lacrosse. Um, during high school, we have to run these 5Ks before tryouts every day, which in high school, you're 14, 16 years old, and you're like, man, why do we have to run a 5K? This sucks. But anyway, we did. And so I realized I wasn't that bad at it. And so after a couple years of doing those before tryouts, I thought I should do something with running and see if I could run a little bit further. And my mom's run a marathon actually every year for the last 30 years, which is crazy. Yeah, she's just been so faithful with it. And so she never told me to run. She never taught me how to run, but she set a good example. And so that was really powerful. A good example is worth 1,000 words. And so essentially I saw her doing that and I was like, oh my gosh, if she can do a full marathon, I could at least do a half marathon. And so I signed up for this half marathon in September of 2018. And I'm like, all right, I'm going to do this half marathon. And once I started telling people I was going to do this, I was met with doubt. I was met with people who, yes, some people supported me for sure, but others were like, oh, are you sure you know how to fuel? Are you sure you've run far enough? Like, do you know how to do this? Do you know how to do that? And I'll be honest with you, I started to doubt myself. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know this. I don't know that. I haven't trained that much. And so it caused me to doubt myself. And the good thing about that is that I had already paid for the race. And so I'm like, I'm not forfeiting my $150. Like, I got to do it anyway. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to give this my best go. And so I go out, I drive with my grandpa like an hour and a half to this race. And I'm really nervous before it, but I go out, I get to the start line and I go off and boom, countdown 3, 2, 1, go. And I ran it and it was challenging and it really pushed me to the max. But it was crazy because I finished and I crossed the finish line and I gathered myself and I was like, my gosh, if I didn't think that I could do this, but I was able to do it, what else is possible? What else can I do? And so there was this moment, this trigger of belief that I realized that I had avoided like a marathon or half marathon before because of, in my mind, how difficult I thought it would be without even giving it a try. I just had written it off. And then I did it. And once I did it, this new level of possibility opened up for me. And this pertains to mental toughness because where I'm at now in my running and like the difficulties that I'm able to handle running a 200-mile race when your feet feel like they're broken and like you're just like getting by on 1 hour sleep per night, you're 80 hours into the race, all those different emotions that you're managing, I could not have handled those back when I started. The Pierce who ran that half marathon was not mentally tough enough to get through the highs and lows of a 200-mile race. But because I did that half marathon, it triggered this belief that I could do more. And as I did more, my discipline, my mental toughness, my ability to do difficult things. I think mental toughness I'd be very interested, David, like as a psychologist and everything, how you would define mental toughness. But I was thinking about it before this show, and I think it's really just like the ability to do things that you don't want to do, and get yourself to do them. And that might be an oversimplified definition, but my ability to keep going when I wanted to quit grew with each race I did and as I pushed myself a little bit further and further. So yeah, those are some difficulties I've run, and we can go into like specific stories of like things that have happened during 200-mile races and how I navigated it and mindsets I had. But I just want to set up kind of this mindset because, like you said, like mindset isn't just gifted, it's built, and it's built through difficulty.
That's fantastic. That is what you've just shared. And you've just got me thinking. So, a little bit of background, like for yourself about me. So, yeah, I've ran like, since my early 20s, and I did a numerous half marathons in my 20s into early 30s. Did a I think I did three. Yeah, I did three marathons in my 30s, and then my body started breaking down. In all honesty, where I was getting a lot of back pain, so it really like reeled me in. Where doing a 5K was tough. Anyway, earlier in this year, I set myself a challenge to do my first triathlon because I thought, well, the swimming is low impact, the cycling is low impact, and try and get myself back into it that way. And the sense of achievement when I crossed the finish line in May doing that was pretty much what you're talking about when you were back to doing your first half marathon, where you're like, okay, right, hey, I can do this. My body isn't broken. What is possible? So yeah, I see the similarities, but in very very different ways in some respects. Going on to what you mentioned about the definition of mental toughness, the way I see it and the way I guess the science describes it is it's the ability to deal with challenges, stress, pressures, and keep going. And some of the things you've mentioned there, confidence in your ability would be one aspect to mental toughness. And clearly, going through various different experiences does improve your confidence. Your self-talk dialogue changes, doesn't it? And so on. So where are we going with this? I guess, well, in some of those races where you've hit the 80 miler, the 80 miles, or when the fatigue kicked in, what are you saying to yourself in those moments?
Yeah, so I'll give you an example because I think regardless of how mentally tough that you are, it's not just like Pierce has some insane mental toughness now and can do everything, like whether he tries to or not. It's really, I think, what I call like a perishable skill. Like if you don't exercise it, it's going to diminish. It's like what you don't use, you lose. And so here's the stories. Back in 2023, I'd signed up for three 200-mile races in 3 months. So it's a race series called the Triple Crown of 200s in the United States, 200-mile race. It was like 220, 213, and 240 miles are these race distances. At the time, I'd run 4 100-mile races before, and like I wanted to get into 200 miles. I'd seen other people doing it. And in this 200-mile race, it's like literally doing 8 marathons back to back to back, sleeping 1 hour a night, going through the mountains, up and down, all around, 30 plus thousand feet of elevation gain. To give you like context, like climbing Everest is 29,029 feet. Like it's just a lot. It's a huge, huge task. And so anyway, I hired a coach, I trained, I did all the things that I should have done. But I'll be honest, at this point, every race I had done, I'd finished, and I was overly confident going into the race. And so I go into this race, Tahoe 200 in July of 2023, overconfident. And I'm excited, and I'm like looking at the prior race results, and I'm like, okay, well, usually I finish top 10% of the field. I'll do that here. What time does that grant me? 72 hours. Okay, I'll be done in 3 days. But anyway, went into this race a little bit overconfident, I'll be honest, and I forgot to lube up. Like in these ultra distances, it's important, as silly as it sounds, really important to lube up your private areas, your armpits, your nipples, like everything, so you don't chafe. Chafing is like when your clothing rubs up against your body or your legs rub together, and you can chafe so bad that you start to bleed. And so sure enough, it was like a perfect storm. About 30 miles in, I start having GI issues, and so I'm going to the bathroom. I'm going diarrhea, like, on the trail. Like, I'm obviously running off to the side, taking care of business, whatever. But it was like constant, like every 10 minutes or something, I'd have to go. And so I'm dealing with that, which is like demoralizing because that's the last thing you want to happen when you're running and trying to finish an ultra marathon. And then because of that, I start chafing really bad. And because of these circumstances, my mindset, because of these circumstances and my mindset going into the race not being dialed in, I started to let that get to my head. I started to let that get to my head. And so it gets to my head and I start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm 40 miles in and I have 160 to go. Oh my gosh, how am I going to do that? I'm only 42 miles in now and I have 158 to go. And I'm moving so slow and I feel so terrible. And so I basically talked myself into a hole in my mind. So by the time I got to 55, I'm like, okay, I'm done. This race sucks. It's just not my day. I need to like throw in the towel and come back at it next year. That was my mindset, my thoughts. But I remember my coach always told me, he said, before you make any decision to quit during an ultramarathon, make sure that you eat and you sleep, okay? And so eat and sleep, because if you eat a bunch and then sleep, usually you're running a lower on calories during these races just because your body can't process enough. And then also like you're obviously tired, you've been running all day, and sleep works, it's amazing. And so I know he told me that. And so I'm like, all right, I'm going to eat and sleep just to appease him because I don't want to. I know like in my head, I'm like, I'm going to quit after, but I can't quit without telling him that I ate and slept. And so I do that and I get to 60 and then I eat and I sleep. And to my surprise, I wake up like an hour later, feeling like a new person, still a little bit sore, but like mentally feeling refreshed. I'm like, I think I can give it a little bit of a go. And so I got back on the trail, ready to go, and then ran to the next aid station. And I was able to get through that race. There were many highs and lows, but I was able to then get through that race by just focusing on getting to the next aid station. And so that's taught me a very powerful principle. And I'll add this to the story. I knew I needed to, I had another 200-mile race, the second one, 18 days later from when I finished that first one. And so I had to adjust things mentally because I wasn't going to physically be ready for it. And so I figured if I came into that race with the same mindset I did the first, there's no way I'd be able to finish. And so I was talking to a friend who's a Navy SEAL, and this is the mental strategy that I was using. I didn't really know to end up finishing the first that I would then use in the second. It's called segmentation. And it's very simple. Probably heard about it before, but if we can grab this process and actually implement it into every area of our life, I think we'll live way greater lives. And segmentation is just bringing a big goal or a big task and breaking it down in smaller subsequent parts. And for an ultramarathon, they do it easy for you because an aid station is anywhere from 8 to 15 miles apart. And so all you do, if you just focus on getting to the next aid station, you will finish the race. Because mentally, one of the biggest things that comes up during races these long is people think, oh my gosh, if I feel this bad 70 miles into the race, how the heck am I going to go another 130? Or if I'm 110 miles, how can I possibly do another 90 if I get worse? And yeah, no one can mentally process that, but that's why you have to focus on just getting to the next aid station, because you'll ride these highs and lows throughout the race. But if you know, okay, I only need to get 5 more miles, I only need to get 8 more miles, and then I can refocus and reset and then go after the next one, it makes it so much easier. So chunking down that big goal into smaller parts, and it is not just for running, it's in your business. You have a big yearly goal, break it down into smaller parts, and what can you do today? Just focus on today, because if you string up enough todays, it's inevitable for you to accomplish your goal.
Yeah, it makes so much sense what you're saying there. There's two things I've picked up there. Is initially when you told that fascinating story about, well, I was going to say fascinating, but rather gruesome story as well. When you had some problems
Yeah.
with diarrhea.
Yeah.
How that hour That sleep really is you being able to press pause and reset, isn't it? And then all of a sudden, you approached it from a completely different mindset. That was one thing I picked up. Then the second one, where you just talking there about chunking down, I guess what you're doing is you're avoiding the trap, which is going to happen in ultras, in long distance sport, where you're future orientated, where you're thinking about the finishing line, or what's
Yeah.
going to happen in 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours. And you're just bringing it back to the moment, really, aren't you?
Yeah, 100%. And you got to, or else like mentally, you're not going to be able to get through it.
So so you've chunked it down. You're telling yourself it's the next station you're going to get to. How do you chunk it down even further? So really all you're thinking about is the next
Gel.
5, 10 meters, or the next meter in front of you. Do you have any little mental little hacks that you
Yeah.
use?
Yeah. Well, one, I also focus on like, okay, I'm taking gels or fuel every 30 minutes or 40 minutes. So that's something a little bit smaller. And then also, I actually try as best I can to lose track of time. Like listening to this, think about like there are times in your life where you're doing things where time goes by so quick. And then there are also times where time moves so freaking slow. Like a minute plank, 2 minute planks. I feel like those, like every single second feels like a minute during those. Like it can go so, at least for me, maybe different for you listening. But that really helps during these ultra marathons because if you are feeling like time is going by fast, that's going to help so much during the race. And so I do that tactically by I don't like listen to much while running during these races because like if I'm listening to a 3 or 4 minute song, I have to go through so many different songs. But I could just be enjoying nature and running and 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes go by very quick, or at least feel like it because I lose track of time. So I don't really know what the science behind that is, but that really helps me during these races was like even just like a mental strategy to get through. So yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast with me, David Charlton, and my guest, endurance athlete and coach, Pierce Showe. We're truly grateful that you've tuned in, you've listened, or you've watched it. And I hope you've really enjoyed hearing Pierce's incredible story, from his early sporting experiences to conquering some of the world's toughest ultramarathons. What really stood out for me was his reminder that mental toughness isn't something that you're born with. It's something you build through challenges, through failure, through willingness to keep showing up. We talked about the power of belief, breaking goals down into smaller chunks, and learning to reset when things don't go according to plan. These lessons are just as relevant for young athletes as they are for coaches, for parents, or for anyone striving to grow under pressure. As you finish listening today, I'd love you to reflect on one question. What's the one area of your life or in your sport where you could run your next mile by focusing less on the finishing line and more on taking the next small step forward? If you enjoyed this episode, please do share it with a teammate, a coach, or a parent who might benefit. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss any future conversations that help you strengthen your mindset. Thanks again for listening and for viewing. And remember, mental toughness is built one challenge at a time. See you next week for part 2 of our fascinating conversation. If you enjoyed this episode of the Demystifying Mental Toughness Podcast with David Charlton, do check out my website, sport-excellence.co.uk, and my online sport psychology resources. The Sport-Excellence website has essential resources for anyone looking to build their own mental toughness or the mental toughness of their athletes or teams, or if you want to achieve peak performance more often or optimal functioning. The Sport Excellence website has everything you need to keep moving forward and thrive. So go on, head over to sport-excellence.co.uk to find out more.